So this is my second video on plant evaluations, and this one I'm going to cover my tomato plants. So the plants in the greenhouse were planted on February 3rd, February 16th, and March 9th. But if you look at the three plants now, they're all pretty much the same. These plants have produced quite a few tomatoes, and they are of the glacier variety, which is known for being a fairly short and also can tolerate cold weather both in the spring and in the fall. So they're good plants to grow later in the year. They've tolerated the heat of this greenhouse quite well. And like I said, I've probably picked easily over 2 dozen tomatoes off these plants, and there are a few more there and more flowers and tomatoes showing on the vine. So not too sure how long they'll continue to go. They're only about a 55-day to maturity plant, but they're still going, and they're semi-determinate. These were started in the house on those dates, and then the first ones that were planted on February 3rd were moved into the greenhouse on March 9th. Plants that were planted on February 16th were moved to the greenhouse on March 22nd, and the plant that was started on March 9th was moved to the greenhouse on March 31st. In spite of those dates, 2 to 3 weeks apart each, they all came out about the same. One plant probably did start producing a little ahead of the others, but it's fairly close. I don't know how well you can see that on the screen, but right now it's 108 degrees in the greenhouse, and it has been much hotter than that at times, well over 120. The fact that these have done so well in here, in what I would consider extreme heat, makes me really question the issues of flower drop in extreme heat. Maybe it's just something about this particular variety, and I'll find that out better when I plant for other varieties in here for the fall, and I'm going to get exposed to some heat before the summer winds down. Tomatoes out in the raised bed garden were all seeded at March 22nd, and that turns out was probably a good 3 to 4 weeks sooner than they should have been. They all developed well in the house, but they were ready well before the weather was ready for me to put them out, and they started to struggle and kind of forced me to put them out sooner than I wanted to. And the plants look healthy and a good size for the most part, but the tomato production has been a little disappointing. One or two here and there are doing pretty well. Like this Sart Rollois in front of me is not bad. Got a number of tomatoes on it. It's one of the better plants as far as production goes. Cherry tomato has tomatoes on it, and we've picked a few, but I've seen cherry tomatoes that do way more than that. This is a super sweet 100. I also have one other cherry tomato, and both doing about the same production. I don't feel like the heat is really a significant factor this year. We've had a few hot days here and there, but overall, it's been pretty reasonable. An interesting thing is I have two beefsteak tomato plants. I have this one here, which has not done much of anything. It is just starting to really take off a little bit. It's got some flowers on it, but it's pretty small. And then right next to it, on the other side of the path, is another beefsteak tomato. All started on the same date, put in the ground the same date, and it's 5 feet tall. It's got some nice tomatoes on it. Not a lot, but not bad. It is an heirloom variety, so you don't expect to get a ton of production out of them like you would on a hybrid. And there's quite a few flowers here that look like they may have set, some of them. Thing is, it's the end of July, so will they get a chance to grow and ripen before the season runs out? This one back here in the corner is pork chop. It's the first time I've ever grown it. Again, there's some tomatoes on it, but they're a ways from being a viable ripe tomato, and I just gotta hope that the season will allow them a chance to ripen. This one is AOCHUAN, and there again, it's got tomatoes on it, maybe a half a dozen even. Quite a few flowers still, but will they set and ripen? They only have about 6 weeks or so to do that, probably before the weather starts to cool off too much and slow them down. Amish paste, which I grew last year, and they did pretty good, not huge numbers, but not bad either. There's only mostly like 2 or 3 tomatoes on each plant. And I really expected them to do much better than that. Again, lots of flowers here at the top. It's just a matter of whether there's going to be time for them to fully develop. This plant right here is Mountain Magic. I've already picked one fully ripened tomato off it. And there's a good half a dozen or so more developing. And well on their way, not tearing color yet, but they're getting bigger. And a few more flowers at the top. This is the other cherry tomato. The variety is escaping me at the minute, but I will add it in text later. And this is another AOCHUAN. Again, one tomato, but multiple flowers. It's just a matter of time. And then this last little one over here is a spoon tomato. Has these teeny tiny little tomatoes on them. You could fit a dozen of them in a teaspoon. Got plenty of flowers. And these come on pretty quickly, so I think that these will have no problem developing fully. See if I can get these where it can be seen. You can see in my hand there's little tiny tomatoes. So a few other notes about these is, as I mentioned earlier, I transplanted these into the ground on May 13th. I probably would have waited another 2 weeks if the plants hadn't been stressed by getting too big and lanky in the house. I think that maybe that could have been some of the setback. That has made it so the production is not where it should be. So next year I plan on starting my seeds 3 to 4 weeks later than I did this year. So that would be closer to mid-April. And hopefully that will make it so the plants don't get to that stressed point before the weather for transplant is appropriate. And the last thing with the tomatoes is I've started my fall greenhouse tomatoes. And so the 2 larger plants to the left are suckers that I've cut off existing plants, and they are rooting in soil that I'm keeping constantly moist by keeping water in the tray. And then these in the green cups to the right are Bonnie Best that I've started from seed. They're also a fairly fast to maturity tomato. And all of these will get potted up into either 2-gallon or 5-gallon pots and go into the greenhouse. I did this last year and with one plant and had surprising success, so I'm expanding on that this year. So these cuttings were taken on July 1st and 13th. And you can see how healthy they look already. And then the seeds were started on the 13th. I'll thin those down to just one plant for each of those cups, and then move them on here in a few weeks.